Welcome to the second and final panel discussion of the Roots pop-up. It's really an honor to have you all here. Thank you so much for coming. For those of you who don't know, I'll just speak a little bit about Roots. So Roots is a traveling Pan-African pop-up that's designed to bring in a little bit more cross-pollination across the fashion industry in various parts of the continent. Roots was created by Loud Africa, of which Rhoda was the founder. Loud is an organization that has a number of programs and initiatives for development of the African fashion industry. And yeah, this is one of those initiatives designed to help us stop operating in such silos, foster collaboration, foster deal making, knowledge exchange, and enable a little shopping of designers that you might not otherwise have access to. So please do have a look around the room if you have not already after the talk. And yes, today we will be discussing fashion in community and how we can operate more as a community in the fashion industry so that it doesn't just take initiatives like Roots to bring us together to create exchange, but it becomes our normal way of operation. My name is Victoria Tola. For those who don't know me in the room, I'm a writer and a content strategist, and I've been supporting the Roots pop-up with content and communications, and with the moderating of our panel discussions. I'm really excited to be here. I think you're going to learn a lot from this panel. I really encourage you to engage. We're going to have our main discussion, and then we're going to open the floor for questions. And I really encourage you, as part of the community that we are trying to activate, to really just come in with your questions, come in with your comments, come in with the future of African fashion that you'd like to see in terms of us operating as a community. So I will take a quick moment to introduce to you our panel. At my far right, we have Anya Dubrat, who is a trend specialist and a trend scientist, I would say, working across consumer trends and supporting various organizations. Most recently, It's illuminate. She now has her own outfit called Department of Trend, and is expecting very big things over there. I met Anya at, I think, my very first, it was my second fashion job. I was working at Acres Club magazine, and we were there at the same time. And she was such a helpful mentor and guide. And yeah, I really appreciated her then, and I really appreciate you being here now. Next to Anya, we have Rhoda Agubonigo, who is the founder of Loud Africa. Rhoda has done all sorts of initiatives and programs across the fashion industry, particularly in West Africa, in getting designers access to market and getting them, training them in business acumen, basically trying to fill those gaps that keep designers and their businesses from growing and from getting where they need to go. I think Loud's done some incredible work across organizations. They have this pop-up in partnership with Merchants on Law, our wonderful hosts. They are also involved in, I think actually I'll let Rhoda speak to you a little bit about some of the work that Loud is doing, particularly in the area of community a little bit later. And then finally we have Tamburai Chirume, who is the founder of One of Each and the African Fashion Academy. Tamburai is someone who knows quite a bit about leveraging community in order to move people forward, in order to change lives, in order to grow business. And we're really excited to have her here and to learn from her experience. One of Each and the Fashion Academy have really completely changed the lives of young women by training them in fashion skills and then releasing them into the industry, helping them get from the upskilling right into employment, getting them good employment, places that will take care of them, where they have respectful environments and they're paid well. We went to Tamburai's office yesterday as part of our creative tour for the participating designers, and it was really inspiring to see up close the work that she's doing. So welcome to all of you, and welcome to our panel. We shall get started. start with Tambarai for this first question, then Roberto, then Anya. What do you think community is? What's a working definition that makes sense for you in terms of the work you do? How do you experience the definition of community?
Thank you. It's good to be here. So I think for me and the one who ran the African Academy of Fashion, community is breaking barriers, right? I think we've all experienced how the fashion industry can be. And I think as creative individuals, breaking barriers is really important to create access for, I think, young people. If we look at the stats of the unemployment rate in South Africa, for youth and for women in particular, it's about 60%. And I feel that fashion and the creative community is a vehicle that has the ability to break that. And that's the definition of community in terms of fashion creativity and how can we make change. You know, if we look at what's happening in the world, I think you cannot live in a place like Cape Town and have a fashion business and not want to build that community. Yeah.
Yes, what is your definition of community? So I think that Tamara took everything because I've seen the potential of the creative industry to change lives. And I think one thing that makes it easy to do that is when you're not working inside those because I mean, as anyone tries to run a business, there's so many things you have to do, so many things you have to figure out. So community to me is collective problem solving. Is we have all of these problems. How can we come together to solve these problems?
Hi guys, it's really lovely to be here in this beautiful space. So I'm coming at it with a slightly different angle, and that angle is that what is the expectation around community building, almost like from a customer point of view. And I think what's become quite clear over the past while is the expectation that there is on brands to create community, to foster and cultivate connection, and whether that is, I mean, a place like this is a really good example, you know, but it's about like the in real life as well as the online connections and creating those communities where customers can engage. Yeah, and I think that it is kind of crazy the expectation on the future of brands and that people actually, especially in South Africa, I think that in South Africa the trust in brands is higher than in government or even religion. It's the expectation is that brands kind of get things done, and there's a lot of responsibility for them to curb loneliness and want to be like wow, sense of joy brought into their lives, and as well, you know, people really want to align and associate with brands in quite a meaningful way. Yeah, I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you. All right, so we'll start with Roberto on this question. There are so many levers, growth levers, ideas, concepts that you can latch on to that you can make place a bet on in terms of your business model, your strategy, in order to grow, connect, get any of your goals met. Why community as one of those levers? What does being a community unlock and enable? And I'd like to start with you and then move to Anya. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that consumer mindset around community, what people are looking for, and why brands should be also to it. Okay. So there are a lot of things that community unlocks. First of all, it helps you not make as many mistakes. Because when you're in a community with other designers, mentors, other entrepreneurs, you get to hear a lot of stories, journeys, paths that people have gone on, and for you it's, okay, I know that this is what works, and this is not what works. So for example, a good example is to be in Cape Town, you set some stores, you have some conversations. If I was going to start a brand in Cape Town, there are certain things that I already know now from having a community in Cape Town, even before starting a business in Cape Town. So community, one of the advantages of community is the mentorship, how you get to learn from other people's experiences, and it can be peer-to-peer mentorship, it can be from people who have gone ahead of you. The other thing is in terms of resources, it takes a lot to build a business, whether it's styling, design, consulting. With community, we're able to pull together resources. A good example is we have about 12 brands who are about to pop up. If an individual brand was going to come to Cape Town and say that, you know what, I want to do a pop-up here, it's going to cost so much more than what they would have called, than what it currently costs them to be here. So I mean, mentorship, cutting down on costs, getting access to opportunities, there's certain opportunities that are never put out there because agencies want to be with communities, with institutions. So when you're part of communities, you know what's happening, you know how to plug into all of these opportunities and advantages, access to markets, learning from people. I think that the potential of communities is endless because things constantly come up. We have conversations, the industry is growing, and when you're plugged into people, you're literally in the center of what's happening. And I think that's really a very powerful thing, especially in fashion industry where we're very people oriented. It's really about who you know, where you're plugged in, all of these tiny things that are things that determine how successful your brand can be or not.
It's interesting because it's like it almost rings true, like the way that the brands and the creators want to connect is the same way that the people buying into the brands want to connect. I found an amazing report on from the Gen Z oriented, but I mean, by 2030, it's 80% millennial and Gen Z, so the brands are things to remember. And I'm going to throw a few stats because I found the answers in the high percentages so interesting because community, 66% of Gen Z said this, it gives them they want a sense of belonging, shared interests, super important, and then shared experiences, active engagement, collaborative and safe environment to kind of engage was also a very interesting one. A safe space, and then 80% said that meaningful interactions with other members and regular updates from community leaders was really, really important. So I think what's also interesting about that, and it'll come up, I think, again, it's like almost that consistency and committing to that community. I don't think you can tap in and out of it in an authentic way. I think that time is past. Like, I think it really needs to be authentic, whether it's, and it doesn't even, I think there's also a new way of looking at success. It doesn't necessarily have to be this like outward global mega thing. It can be small, it can be meaningful. It's even like, maybe we'll get to that again later, but like, there's almost like a new deep growth happening, which is quite an interesting thing.
Talk a little bit more about that.
Yes.
My perspective is that if we look at all of us in the room, we all have a certain number of years of experiences in our lives. So each and every single person that's sitting down has got information that they're giving, which is relevant to their industry and not relevant to their industry. And that is where community is so powerful because someone sitting right next to you could have the information and you just don't know. And it takes one simple conversation to just start that. So I think that is why community is important as well, just to add on. What you said was really also just giving thought of thinking of it really differently.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a tennis match we're trying to do here, talking about fashion businesses but also talking about the individual passion business's desire to build a community on the consumer side. But I really think a lot of the principles of community remain the same across both those functions. So you should hopefully learn things that apply to both those functions today. The next question is going to be about what makes a good community. What are the ingredients do you need for a good community to start with you?
I mean, I guess some of that was really like mentioned. There's a space where shared experiences and true engagement can be felt in an authentic way. I think authenticity is like, it's thrown around, but I think it's truly important to us. I've been reading some interesting things where it's like the marketers aren't the ones telling that story. It's like the brands have to get out of the way in a way. But yeah, I think like I said, I think there needs to be a true commitment. If this is something you want to foster, I don't think you can do it like by any half measure. And then defining like your purpose and intention around it. Consistency comes up a lot. Consistent content. And then something else which is super powerful is then like the power of co-creation. I think people want to be more part of the process. And the conversation as well around growth. Like, and it can be small, it can be like choosing colours or customizing a pattern, or what I mean, like that co-creation, bringing the community into the process, I think is quite an exciting space. And also you're getting that buy-in, you're getting that involvement up front, which I think is really great.
Thank you. Rhoda and Tamara, just your experiences as community builders at Loud and Tamara here in Cape Town with one of each of the partners. So with moving Loud, I definitely think that consistency is very important because I think about it, we've done this consistently for 4 or 5 years now. Way earlier than that, but consistently for 4 or 5 years. And I think that one thing that is really important with building a community is the ability for people to know that you're always there. And I think that's where being authentic comes in, because what keeps you being there is the fact that it's genuine. You want to be there, you want to connect with people. And I think that that's also where having a shared objectives come in. Why are you starting a community? Why are you building a community? What products do you want to sell? Why do you want to reach out to people? Is it because you want to build your brand? Is it because you want to solve problems? I think having a very clear objective is very important when building a community, because that helps you design the kind of activities and engagements that you put in the community and that keeps the community going. So a clear objective, that defines your mission, your vision, consistency. I think that empathy is also a very important part of building community, whether as a brand or a group of businesses. You need to be able to connect and have a genuine sense of connection with the people that you're dealing. So for example, with Loud, I started out because I wanted to be a designer. I had no idea what it is. And in my part of the world, now it's different, but this is almost 10 years ago. If you want to be a designer, you're going to a distress store, and you're going to then have to be a tailor. That's the foundation. So I did that. I was like, okay, this is not bad, but I wasn't sure how it was going to work. And then I went to school, and I looked around me. I saw that there were a lot of other young people who were modeling and fashion week, who were stylists. So everybody was young, trying to navigate the industry. And for me, I said to myself, how can we come together, work together, support each other? That really was what started out initially. And even as we grow over the years, that same sense of genuine connection and empathy, as I see designers, I understand, I see the creativity we have on the continent. I'm constantly burdened with how can we make it better, how can we push out the creativity that's on the continent. And that's what drives what we do in the community. So I think that genuine sense of connection, I think it plays across all. So whether you're connecting businesses or if you're a brand, and if you're designing for women, what are you designing for women? What do you want them to feel? How do you want them to feel with the way your pieces? All of these different things that makes it really become a strong community, a good community, because people can actually tell whether you're genuine.
Both hands to say it all. Just to add, I think creativity is about feeling, right? We are usually with the work that created comes from a certain place. So I think automatically good communities are safe communities. And we see that a lot with our school, where we're trying to really create safe spaces amongst the learners themselves. And they go into the industry as safe spaces for the industry. Because I think that's a real requirement for the fashion industry. If I look at history and starting out in my early days as like an intern at a certain company and that kind of thing, I think we need to create communities and environments which feel comfortable for people to show up as they are. You know, so I think that's for me the empathy is very important. And also the integration. I think integration and diversity is what can create healthy communities. I think I'm just speaking from a Cape Town perspective and fashion industry and our school, and how can we get young people from underserved communities to feel a sense of belonging in spaces that don't feel comfortable. And I think within creating those communities is important because the youth form the largest growing population and they are the masses. You know, these are our future people who are going to be in the industry. How do we create an environment which says hard work, but an environment that's also safe for them to show up without being embarrassed about their culture or where they truly come from?
Yeah, it's really powerful having space to show up as all of yourself and not have to leave pieces behind in order to function and work. I think we'll move to our next question, which is how African fashion can become a better community like within the industry. So Anya, you have lots of experience from within the fashion industry. Rhoda, you have experience around the fashion industry together and working in it. Tamara, you obviously do. So I really want to hear from your perspective as community members, as members of this fashion community. Where is fashion failing? Where are you struggling? Where do you think we could do better as an industry?
Well, I think that we are at quite an exciting business. And I feel like, you know, a lot of the things that have been said, we starting to see like real examples of like I can feel the shift in terms of I think for a long time the fashion systems were set up in a way where it was like looking towards the West and just that was the real and equal. And I'm loving how that is not, you know, there's a move away from that, and I think it's something that is happening on a global scale as well. There's a lot more kind of looking at ancient wisdoms and how things were done pre-industrial revolution, things that were disregarded as like, you know, not sophisticated enough, and I was like, oh, hang on. Like, so I'm loving the time in which we are also looking more inward for solutions as opposed to outward. And I think it's a very exciting space for us to come together, have these kinds of conversations, keep having these kinds of conversations, just people, because it's not a once off. It's a continuous like conversation, which is exciting.
Yeah, this is a really it's not necessarily that it's a problem with the fashion community, but it's this moment that you're talking about is an opportunity to really solidify the global fashion community. So it is an exciting time, and hopefully this talk is all time for us to be able to enable even more of that. So just going with what she said, I completely agree with everything. I think that there's been a lot more looking inward, what we have as a people, what we have already going, how we can maximize our potential. But I would say that to make that work and to solve that gap, where it's not just a one-off thing, I think we then need to look outward a bit to say what kind of innovation and technology can we start to combine with our creativity, our culture, our communities. Because what happens is, closer to the end of the year, the African fashion industry comes alive. There are all these sports and shows across the continent, which is very important. But it's how do we remain connected all through the year, and also being mindful of the fact that there are a lot of logistics differences. I mean, West Africa to South Africa is hours apart. And I think that that's where technology comes in. We need to begin to leverage technology where the community is. So it's these conversations are important, this one-on-one interactions are important, but how do we then go beyond this and use new technology and innovation to create a continuous sense of connectivity, where all year long, all season long, we remain connected, maybe with fashion networks, digital platforms. I think we have a bit of this in the West. And then in these differences is when we're able to come together physically. It's like, oh, we've been connected all year long, and it's great to be in person together now at this time. So it's looking what is so important, but then how can we leverage the tools that exist outward or in the West to create a solid sense of continued community?
Would you say that's the main challenge that you notice with creative directors inside Laos community of designers and fashion professionals?
So I'm not sure I'd say that's the main challenge, but I think it's a factor. I'll tell you this. We've been with us, we went to Accra and now one came out. Yesterday we went to a couple of designers stores and we had conversations with designers. And I say this in the West and now in the South and even from conversations on the East. We have the same colors. We're trying to solve the same issues. We have the same things going right. But the only thing is we are not as aware of how similar our problems are and how similar solutions can be. And of course, it's hard to connect from the West to the South to the East. But we have technology, and I mean that's why it all exists. And I'm going to talk about that a bit more. But I think we can do more with technology when it comes to the community.
Great, thank you. Ryan, I'd love to talk to you as well about how African fashion can become a community, particularly from your experience with partnering with industry to make progress at the academy, and also your experiences at SAPLEC, because SAPLEC is, I'd say, its own form of community, and has been able to use that power of being together to help people get access to market, particularly.
Absolutely. I think just to go back to the challenges, one of the things is that I think we sometimes don't realize what we have. Having gone around the world to so many different countries that we have so many perceptions of, we have gold in Africa from a manufacturing perspective, from a creativity perspective, and I think the minute we're able to, which I think is happening really, we're doing this really, to have more inter-Africa trade, I think is key, and that's where the focus is on at the moment, especially from a local governmental perspective. While we have showcased all over the world, I think policies wanting to see more inter-Africa trade, and I think that's going to open a lot of doors. But I think agencies such as SAPLEC, the Craft and Design Institute, for me have been a good vehicle of building community and meeting amazing people. Like, I mean, I can just say an example. Oh, sorry. Like for instance, I was. So talking about solving, it doesn't like me. Okay, talking about like solving problems, right? So for instance, in our factory or our design space, our battery basically the craftsmanship is what we work on. We never really did like your structured bags and all. Then I went to a trade show in South Korea and I made my text, and this was in February. But now it's like we know each other like as if we're friends. And he's a handbag designer and crafter. And we've been working with each other this year for product development because I have the African sort of beadwork and all, and Matthias has got the technical creativity and all of that. So I think those kind of things can be very powerful, you know, from a long-term perspective. And at the end of the day, these are patterns that are created by South African footwear industry or the craft and design institute. And they might not always work for us as individuals how we want them to work, but you have to find ways to make it work for you. Because I think also as creators, we're very quick to complain. Say, the government's not doing this, they're not doing that. But how do you take that opportunity and make it work for your brand? So I think, yeah, there is room, and I think the eyes are on us in Africa. Wherever you go in the world, someone wants a piece of Africa. But how do we make it bring in good money? We should stop giving it out for free.
Thank you for that. We'll start with Anya on this next question about fashion brands being the community members and communities that they're part of, and the communities they depend on, particularly in the sense of like one of the projects that I worked on in the past is the Designer Accelerator and the Ethical Fashion Initiative. They are a project of the UN that basically takes artisan communities around the world, help them organize themselves into suppliers that are global export ready, and then they connect them to people like Miracle, the Australian handbag brand, but also people like Vivienne Westwood. And then they're able to use their craft, offer their craft as a service to use people for their collections. What I found there is that you have very different experiences, even like within the single organization of EFI, depending on how good or how engaged a community member the brand is willing to be. You have an organized community of artisans, you've got EFI as kind of a middleman, and then you've got the brand on the other side, and you have incredible experiences when that brand decides it's going to be in community with you, your artisans, your organizers at EFI, and very strange experiences of the brand does not want to be in community and kind of, I don't know, expects this very different model to operate exactly the same way all their other suppliers do. So I want to talk a little bit about fashion brands being better community members in terms of other parts of the ecosystem that you depend on as a brand. We'll start with Anya. I'd love to hear your definitions and characteristics of like today's community member from the lens of consumer trends. And then Rhoda will go to you for examples from the Love community, their communities. If you have any highlights of brands that have a special connection to community and how they're using it, and then we'll continue to provide for perspective on what it each's success as a member of the fashion community, which you told us a little bit about yesterday when we visited your studio.
Yes, I kind of had like I thought of quite a few things there. I think again, like brands are also, especially like bigger brands. I mean, there are some amazing examples of this. Also need to take responsibility for the work and that they want to see out there. And this is a very global, very high-level luxury brand. Potato Veneta actually has recently started. They've actually employed a head of heritage, which is like a brand new position. And furthermore, they started a college where 50 people join in learning how to do craft, obviously at quite high level, and those 50 people are guaranteed work within the company, which we spoke about education, the link almost between, or the lack of link sometimes between, and it's not just the fashion industry, I do a lot of work also within the design industry locally, and it's the same thing. It's what you're studying, what is almost expected of you within the actual industry. There are big gaps. So I think there's work to be done and responsibility to link what the skills that are being taught and how how practically that can be used. I think there's still like gaps within that greater community. And then I do think also to your point earlier, it's like not looking in silos, but everyone in the creative industry, he's saying like local, global, the same themes are coming up. Within the design industry, the same conversations are coming up. How do we get together? How do we create brand, SA brand? Like how do we want to do that? How do we, how do we take that forward? And then what we can learn from different. I think it's quite solid in terms of like I think the fashion industry needs to, we all need to come together. All the creative industries, we can learn a lot from each other. Like you said, we have a lot of the same problems, but maybe what is a problem in the one is not a problem in the other one, and we can help kind of in a multidisciplinary way solve each other's issues.
Fashion industry that community members and communities they're part of. If you could talk a little bit about maybe an example from now and the designers that are there and what they've done in communities that they're part of.
Okay, so I mean, we have a community of over say 2,000 plus across Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, Ethiopia too. And with an institution like now, we are consistently designing initiatives, programs, working with agencies, getting data to design solutions that we think solve the problems that these brands have. And in that huge community, there are certain brands that we see stay so plugged in, meaning we have an initiative there on it. Because I find that sometimes brands have problems and people design solutions, but they don't want to do the work that it takes to get the solutions. And community is a powerful tool, but it doesn't solve everything if you are not an active member in the community. So for brands, the best way to take advantage of communities and when resources, information, and you don't even have to wait when they're useful resources in that sense. Just really ensuring that you're plugged in. I found that we have more sources with brands that are plugged into. For example, some of the brands that we took to Accra were brands that were already in our community. They had gone through our incubator program. In fact, the winner of the last edition of the incubator program was going with us to Accra. And I think he gave us feedback, which we had in the press release, where he said, oh, I always wanted to and being in other groups in Accra gave you some stories in Accra. So a brand like that would come out and say, community has learned from why the state city building, from winning getting funding from the incubator program to now being part of groups Accra and now getting stockists. For brands, it's really ensuring that you're plugged in, and also ensuring that you really see the value in the community. You don't just, I think sometimes you get comfortable. It's over here, over it's over here, but why am I here? What do I want to get from this platform, from this community, and ensuring that you stay plugged in? Of course, it might not always be buzzing every single time, but there will be opportunities that come up. And I tell you from a writing to the founder's perspective, when opportunities come up, I tend to lean towards brands that are active, because there are brands that I feel like we can vouch for, they've gone through our programs, and I can vouch for the quality of what they turn out or send out. So, yeah, that's the question.
Yes, I think what you said about staying connected from a brand perspective, that really helped us as the brand since early days in 2014, and building the brand and building a reputation. I think is very important because the industry is so small, it's getting times is even smaller. The world is very small. So I think you're building a really a sound reputation of how you want to show up in the industry or even outside the industry. And also stepping outside our industry is very important for us as fashion individuals to see what else is out there. I think for us that's just been thing, like really working on bridging the gap, as Annie said, bridging the gap between education and effectiveness. It's really important because I think the fashion community itself also needs to contribute to the work that they want to do. Because we are the ones who have the requirements, but how do we have the requirements without contributing to the teaching and training? Schools and institutions cannot do that for us because they've got a way that they teach for many, many years. You know, as I was telling you guys yesterday, some of the students we have are coming from like your CBUTs and all of that. And they never really learn how to actually make garments, which is not a designer's role, but I think that's one of the most important elements. You know, and I think in southern parts of Africa, South Africa, that's kind of what's kind of setting us back a little bit in terms of from a competitive edge in comparison with the West, where the garment making part is key. Because how do you know quality garment when you don't know how?
Yeah, I remember my garment tech education in CPUT. I don't know what things are like now, but I went to CPUT, which was 2011 to 2013, a whole lifetime ago. We had a pretty solid garment tech education, and I left like not being the best seamstress in the world, being a lot of practice, but I left being able to tell the good from the bad. And it changed my whole shopping experience. I would go into the surprise and see things that I would have been failed for and not be able to shop anymore. Yeah, I think it's really key that the brands do get involved at that education level. I think what I've seen with the education aspect of it is brands expecting the industry and the ecosystem here to operate as if it's a lot more mature than it actually is, which is strange because you came from this ecosystem, you came from this education system, you know what things are like. Yeah, it's just, I think people enter the industry with skewed expectations of just how much they're going to have to invest to get something good out. So we're sort of rounding up the conversation here. I would love to hear from each of you one obstacle and one solution, along with any additional comments that you've got about the things that are holding us back from African fashion functioning this way, and how you think we can overcome it. One obstacle, one solution, especially considering Tamara, your comment about how fashion needs to be looking around for solutions, but also outside of fashion for solutions. So every problem that we're having as an industry is something that can be solved with dealing with the skill sets and access that exist within our own circles. So yeah, I'd just love to hear, I mean, you talked about all of the questions of how do we do this, what are your ideas on how we do this, and I guess the things that are standing in our way that we need to solve to get past that how. Anyone? To start.
I guess the biggest issue is probably that as an industry, I grew up as a creative and maybe never really got seen as like a very serious thing or a real industry. But then you look at like countries like Korea, South Korea, we literally made a point to go a creative industry we will invest in and it will be part of the campaign. That's why you see movies, the music, the fashion brands that are coming out of there is just phenomenal, like mind-blowingly amazing. So that's like, you know, we have some obvious like obstacles, but I think we're also at a time where we're like not keen to wait for that to come and just, you know, kind of ready to just experiment and make things happen and come together. So that's, you know, it's like the good and the bad. It's like the thing that we don't have is like make it happen. Also, I wanted to say that again, as a fashion industry, we don't have to do, if you have a brand, you have a community, and that is a pretty solid thing, stay in your lane. Like, there's no reason that you should stay just within fashion. Go into food. Or have a little restaurant. I think that's also quite an exciting time. If you have a brand, like, just explore it. I mean, Muji started as a stationery shop and now have hotels. You know, like, that kind of thinking is quite a cool, exciting space and ways to think of brands. So yes, it's not just fashion, it can be so much more and yeah, very fun spaces.
So just picking off that, I think just ensure that we pay as much attention to education, really understanding how the industry should work, how, I mean, in the West, for example, a challenge that we have is a lot of people come into the fashion industry and want to be brand owners, which is not a bad thing, but we need an industry. The brand owners need merchandisers, business development experts, all these different layers in the industry. And I think it's an education factor. Because a lot of people come work with us at the house and leave and say, oh, I didn't know I could be a fashion production manager, or I could do something else. So I think we need to pay a lot more attention to education across the continent, because I think that in certain areas, so for example in the South, you might be stronger in certain areas and the West is not, and the East is not. And the more we need to share, and not just share informally, but share formally, institutionalize fashion education beyond just sewing, garment construction, but even as an industry, I think that it would really help shape the way that the industry works. And just what I said about people not taking creative businesses or say for this, like what exactly they do. And I think that people will start to take us as an industry more serious when we institutionalize a lot of things and create systems around a lot of things, when it becomes, when we create a strong system around the things that we're doing, around the way it works, people start taking it serious. And there's something that I brought earlier too, where it's like beyond just the industry, beyond things coming to us as an industry, how can we as an industry start to think about how we affect our world and other industries? How can fashion interact with finance, with technology, with healthcare? How can fashion actually become this tool for problem solving beyond the aesthetics and how good we look and all of those things? These tiny little things are things that would help people take them more serious. And I think we can solve these things by having conversations together. I know there's been a lot of conversations about never having an African Fashion Council, but I think that it would do us a lot more good to have one than not have one. Yes.
Absolutely. I think just to add on the education part, I think entrepreneurship education for creative entrepreneurs is key. And when I say entrepreneurship education, I'm not even talking about like the book stuff. And for me, the key one there is relationship building. Sometimes brands look for very beautiful things, but because sometimes they don't understand what it takes or how to build a relationship, they're not making that money in their businesses. You know, so I think that's one of the challenges where creative people are creative, but it doesn't mean you have to be the entrepreneur. How do you, as your business grows, get somebody to be the business developer or that kind of thing? But I think just those tools and knowing how to build that brand through relationship building can really set things apart for you as a brand owner.
Yeah, also spoke about that mindset of people coming to the fashion industry with, which is that I have to be a brand owner. And they either don't know about the other roles or not interested in the other roles because culture has made entrepreneurship seem really cool when it's not a thing for everybody. Which is not to say it's the pinnacle and some people will get there and some people will not. But it's about everyone thriving in a lane that was really designed for them. And there are so many lanes to thrive in fashion. And we were all, I guess, a little bit more engaged about lanes, excited about our lanes,
I think we function a lot better as well as a community and as a network. That was a thing that I would say I struggled with when I did design school. I studied fashion design. By the end of it, I really didn't think design was for me. And I thought, I'm going to try this content thing for a while. I've got a basic writing talent. I love the world of magazines. I'm going to hang out in content for a while, pick up some skills, and in a couple of years, see how I feel about design. At the end of this year, it's been 11 years of just checking out content. And I found my lane here, and I'm sticking to it and seeing how I can best serve the entire ecosystem and the network that we're all part of. And I'm really excited about the opportunities and possibilities I have found to move everyone forward from my lane. So I think if we can step back sometimes and just have a look at our role and how we make better in service of the whole community, a lot could be unlocked. But I also think people think you're losing out by designing your role around being in service of the community, not of yourself. Designing my work to be in service of the community is only important. It's unlocked a lot of things for me. So thank you so much, panel, for our initial conversation, and we will now take some questions. So,
Or if you're shy, you can grab us afterwards.
very good.
I'm shy. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for the platform. I'm Susanna Teddy. Currently working as a social media manager. But initially I'm a fashion designer, self-taught, and doing exciting at the moment. So my initial question is, how would you advise a creative, a young creative that has very much experienced a lot of like exploiting in the space? For an example, I recently, I think 2022, I did Mixing Fashion Week, Men Week Holiday, and then I was working with Red Fat as part of a competition. Red Fat part of the top 6 doing showcase some of our work. That was a good thing, that was a good platform. And then the next year, I worked as a stylist. The issue was I was being trained as a graphic designer because I studied graphic design, but the brand was the fashion brand, so I was like, okay, this is good. It's something that was like the main goal with doing graphic design and fashion. So the problem was I worked with this brand, they know, and then I got exposed overall because I did styling for him, I did graphic design for him, and when it was like time for, because like a lot of people make it difficult for young people to speak about actually compensating. And when you bring the conversation, you need to be like, about money. And I'm like, no, not. Like, it's a compliment. This is what I'm motivated, this is what drives me. This is why I can travel and be here with you. And yeah, like, how would you advise someone who I was really giving credit at all? So, and like, the initial question is, how would you advise someone who is starting to collaborate with other people because of that experience and other experiences? And I struggle so much working with people because of that.
First of all, that makes me so angry. Yeah, and I don't know if I necessarily have like the answer, but I think it also just it resonates. It comes back to that thing of like not being taken seriously as a job, as an industry. I mean, I remember when I also like first started, and you know, you internally. I mean, it is also a global fashion industry issue. It's not, you know. I remember in London, like Elle magazine had 6 interns, unpaid interns permanently there, but they could only do 6 months at a time because after 6 months legally they have to stop paying. So when you go for like the fashion assistant job, you are competing with people that have 2 years of free experience. So it's not just a South African issue, but I feel like it's a big issue when you should be like happy to be there. So So, and maybe a bit more regulation around it. I mean, the film industry are pretty well regulated. That's a creative industry. So maybe it's about, just a bit more regulation, and maybe we can catch it from that industry. The film industry is massively creative. So how they've been able to do it, maybe we can learn a bit from them. But again, I think the professional
I feel so happy about my experience.
Okay, so I mean, I think everyone has had that. I mean, I can say my first experience of working on higher industry as a fashion teacher, person who was my senior would like look at the label of what I'm wearing every single day because I look nice and I wasn't expected to look nice, right? But for me, I think I viewed it differently. I'm not saying the trauma is right, but it helped me want to be like, listen, I want to live in a brand where I don't treat people like that, right? So sometimes there are places that are like that, where you can see, okay, this is not right how I'm being treated, but I see what it's going to give me. I see what I'm going to get in the long run, right? And unfortunately, we don't have regulatory bodies or anything of that nature. Like, for instance, now we are going to be placing 12 of our graduates into businesses, right? But we place them according to the businesses we know and how the right match. And sometimes you're not the right match for that company. It's not about you, it's not about the company. Their rules and regulations are not the right match for you. So I feel like it shouldn't stop you from trusting people because there are really good people out there. There are really good companies out there that do treat people well. But then you also have to bring something to the table. Because we also see it sometimes with youth where it can be very challenging. We've just hired a designer and she thinks she's better than everybody else. That's not the way the ethics are in our company. Whether they're teachers, whether they're cleaner, whether they're whatever, we're all pretty much the same. I do some work that I shouldn't be doing, but I'm the boss. So I think it's a give and take on both sides where you have to see that is this company the right match for me? And if it's the right match, what do I bring to the table? So don't view that experience as too much of a trauma experience. Let it elevate you to take you to where you want to be, to build something where you don't treat people like that in the future.
I think it's really important. It's difficult to have that conversation about saying, yes, there are really good people in the fashion industry, while also saying everyone has had an experience like that. But somehow those things are true. It really isn't to the level of trauma. It's mostly decent, smart people who want to help each other. And I say maybe my own advice to you would be about boundaries and getting as much signed in writing as possible. It's very important to operate with contracts. Fashion very often doesn't and doesn't like to, so that if you continue to do things like that, what happened to you? And so all of those are conversations we need to be having, and yes, regulation. We had someone at our first panel from the film industry, who I think I'll actually reach out to and ask her about how that regulation is going, how they designed it to protect people. And yeah, we should see about implementing some of that on our side. Okay, next question.
Hi guys, I'm Sam. My name is Matthias. I'm a designer and product developer within the leather sphere. I just want to touch on what you said before I pose my question to the panel. I have been doing this for 16 years. There are big name designers that I've produced for, designed for, that still hasn't recognized the work that I've done for it. I think at some point you put so much of yourself into your craft and what you do and what you love that it would be nice to be recognized. I might have thick skin. I eventually just got to the point as a designer. And I think that's just confidence that comes through experience within the industry, and really it can be cutthroat. our fashion industry, a lot of designers, there's a lot of ego. And I've just urged just to you. Exactly. You know, but then to the panel, what I'd like to ask, and maybe Rhoda, and I don't know how familiar you are with the South African and Cape Town specifically fashion industry, but what would you guys like to see change within the Cape Town, and not only fashion but design industry? What would you guys like to see shift and change? I can go on and mention a few things that we're all very aware of, but what would you guys like to see change in Cape Town fashion industry?
Cool. So I think on my side, we just talk about the loss. I think the recognition of what you talked about, I mean, it was really there were some people that I know who done work, and it's made it difficult for them to break through because of the very same reasons that Senator has mentioned. And I think the change needs to be that there's also new people are being given way. I think there's a problem there where we are constantly seeing the same people. And, we need to see the new people and the new talent, and that's how we become an industry. We're not an industry for 10 designers. We should be an industry for 500. Yeah. Because we all have something different as individual people, not even our products. It's above the product. It's not just about the product. So I think for me, that's what I want to see. I want to see a Cape Town where I don't feel uncomfortable in the fashion space, because sometimes it can be. It can feel daunting. You sometimes don't want to go because you don't want to experience the ego, because it doesn't match with your energy. For me, that's how I feel. Or there are certain brands that are talking about what they do, but then they don't do that. So I would like to see more, and I'll say this as this, young black women of color that are showing up and being recognized and taking up space. But that requires experienced designers to be able to hold hands and help.
Just to add that, I don't think that's just a Cape Town thing. I think it's a global fashion thing, because fashion is really about expression, and everybody brings like personality excesses to their work. But I would just say that one thing that I found to work is, and I think people like Tamara, is even with all of the toxicity in the industry, just really being yourself and finding people who have same energy as you do. I think that it really, really makes a difference. You start to find, if you just have to build a community of people where you find yourself doing amazing things. And I think one thing also is when you focus a lot on like doing your work, refining your craft, at some point, attention will be paid to you. And I think the other thing that we don't realize is now an advantage is social media. I think social media has sort of broken the barriers, some of the barriers, of course. And what that means is in the past, a global brand, maybe an illuminate, might not be able to spot an emerging designer somewhere in Nigeria or Ghana or Cape Town. But now, because of TikTok, Instagram, all of these platforms, so it's like they're all these limitations. But with technology, as we grow, there are new solutions that you can sort of use to break out and build your own space. And I think sometimes we focus a lot on the industry, the people that we want to see us, the places that we want to be accepted. And I realized that there are thousands and millions of people elsewhere who will literally be awe of what you are, your craft, and what you create. And I've learned from personally, I've learned to focus on that. And then I find out that sometimes certain things happen that break the limitations that people have put on you, and they're surprised, and then they start to extend and they have a fellowship. So just a stream of this, not it.
Yeah, I mean, all great answers. The democratization, I think, has happened. So I think that might path to success, whatever that idea was, has changed. And I think, diversity, more diverse types of brands, offerings. I think it's kind of like, I'm already seeing, I see a lot of like collectives, there's a little bit of fashion, there's a bit of a bar, a hangout, those kinds of spaces where people are creating their own platforms. Very exciting to see. And then I guess also, just the more diversity in offering. It doesn't all have to be luxury. I know with manufacturing it can be quite difficult because it can be quite expensive, and I think even within the design industry there's a massive high-end pitch. And I think there's scope for kind of almost like design solutions that are in different categories. So I think there's so much scope, and then we must just export our brands and just create African brands all over the world.
Add a little bit to that, specific to your question about Cape Town. I was in Cape Town for 8 years before I moved to Johannesburg. I studied here for 5 years, and I watched a lot of creators around me, young black people in particular, just reach a certain ceiling that they could not break past, and they moved to Joburg and explode. So yeah, there is a specific issue to Cape Town sometimes. I think that's just, what's specific to Cape Town is the way that it manifests here. It's the same issue that manifests differently somewhere else. But I think everything you have all said is true, and what I really want to highlight and focus on for you again is that yes, we need sponsors, yes, we need mentors, yes, we need an extended experienced hand to open up and pull us up to where they are. You also need to be your own best advocate. No one believes in what you are ready to offer like you believe in what you're ready to offer. Nobody else lives in your head. Nobody else knows what you're capable of. You know what you're capable of. You need to get online and tell people in the spaces where the people that you want to connect with are. I think I will just tell people the story of how running my mouth online has been one of the largest career builders for me. It was at one point I had 400 people every morning watching my Instagram stories about fashion headlines across the world and trying to break down what it means and what's happening for people who are not fashion people. And I was saying in response to this is so fascinating. Fashion actually is a business and it operates like our industry, and fashion drama is the same as my corporate drama. And it's also something that got me about 11 months at Woolworths, being a copywriter on the fashion media home team. They hadn't looked at my CV by the time we signed. It had all been off of my Instagram account. So you have to be your own advocate. You've got to put your work out there and show people not just what you offer, but who you are. Because there's 1,000 graphic designers. They want to work with you because on top of what you offer, this is who you are and they're connecting with that.
Hi guys, my name is Sangani. I am so my name is Sangani. I'm not sure if my question will be in line with community building, but I wanted to ask you guys what are the challenges you are facing, that you face as a founder, or rather what's that one thing that would make you faster as a founder?
So founder-specific challenges within African fashion.
So I work within the trend forecasting space, which literally, I discovered it almost by mistake. I didn't know that it existed when I studied fashion, or even a little bit into my amazing career. And it's a really important part, foresight development, starting to kind of figure out what's happening, why is it important, and how I will potentially want to engage with it. Because not every And I'm not talking about like the trend TikTok cycle, like, that's a reactionary game. It's like if you're building a business, what are potential different business models I can look at? Or, like that kind of more, it's a really important part of the business, but I think for me, the most frustrating thing is like people don't understand that. And because they're in this like, 1 year, 5 year cycle of profit, it's quite a reactionary game. So I think for me, that's the biggest, and I see it as a bit of a, I have worked through in that kind of education of why it's important. That's kind of a little bit part of the job. Yeah.
I think mine is usually the same thing too. Because like I said, I started by creating something that usually exists in that sense. You're designer, stylist, what exactly are you? So I think for me as a founder, it's really being pioneering, unique, and just getting people to understand the importance of why we need to do what we do, why we need to do trainings to incubators, in communities, empower creators. I think now it's easier, but at the time that I started, it was a lot harder explaining why we did it, number one, and it was also a lot harder getting people to see why investment is going in that direction, because it's not just a giving money to make an outfit. You sell the outfit, you make money back. It's give us money to create systems, to empower people, to empower designers. It's not a cash in, cash out system. It's people use the system you. I think for me that's been one of the biggest challenge. Even now, because we're constantly expanding our frontiers, going into new territory, going into new spaces, sort of building a pioneer living, to get people to understand the importance of what we do, including the designers. As interesting as it is, what we're designing is mostly for the ecosystem, but even getting the ecosystem to understand the importance of why you need to learn, why you need to connect to certain opportunities, it is actually a challenge. I think I say that's been one of the major challenges, but I think education, having activations and exams also really helps, because now we start to see how we can collectively learn and even drive businesses forward. I think having success stories, right, getting funding, getting stopped, all of these things that help people see that this is serious business and it needs to be paid attention to if you want to work in the industry.
Yeah, so I think the challenges are similar. I think when we started the school, it was very hard for people to get a brand, it's not bags, why training people, what do you do? But I think when we started supplying brands with people to work with them, that's when we started understanding. But also we were not just supplying them ordinary people, we were supplying them good people. And I think the ongoing challenge is funding. I think for us, we became an export business without having the intention of being that. We sell very little locally, and most of our sales are in the US and different countries. And building a global brand is expensive. We need real money to do that. So yeah, that's a challenge.
And I think just to add that, just on a personal note, and I think just speaking back to what you said earlier, I don't think we speak a lot about the level of consistency, confidence, and illusion it requires to be a founder or to start anything. You usually have to believe in yourself. You usually have to, so sometimes you're the only one who's seeing what is missing. So you usually have to have, I think to be a founder, you need 30 to 50% of illusion. And just being consistent. These things are really emotional, but I think it makes a difference. I find that people that stop halfway, stop believing in themselves. People can stop halfway because they don't want to rest something. Sometimes it's also because they stop believing in themselves, and you're not always going to get somebody on the outside that will say, oh, what you're doing is great, this is much needed. You really want to see. And sometimes the results you get at certain times might not even help. But I've just learned on the journey, just having that consistent vision that, you know, there's something here, I'm very happy, I'm going to be right now. Whether it's working now, what's not working, how can I do it, how can I make it work, it makes a difference.
And just, I mean, that totally resonates. It's you need a little bit of patience, which I'm incredibly impatient because I really want life perfect now. And it's quite a journey in terms of like almost going, okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just almost like get it done and move it forward. And I think that's a good like ongoing like lesson. And I think, yeah, I mean, I really, that's when I started to focus, I started with, it was very much a startup mentality, so I really learned that there. It was like, rather have it 80% and get it out, than waiting until it's like 100% and then, you know, you've missed the boat. Or it's like, it really is there's an exercise in that it doesn't have to be perfect. We're in beta with Slurp. It's like, it's ongoing relearning, let's go. You know, let's not stop what we're doing.
And it's a big lesson in fashion to be able to take from tech, I think, because the minimum viable product, but it's the smallest, simplest version of this that can launch into the world. That's what you launch, and then you upgrade, iterate, build. So be consistent, we do. We take 2 more questions. It's me, 1 and 2.
Well, I actually have 2 questions. I'm going to try for this. Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Woman. I have my own marketing agency and focus on community building and creating conversations around brands. And I've also recently launched a community of my own that supports and empowers entrepreneurs, business owners, founders, side hustlers, basically anyone trying to talk about something. Exactly. So I do have 2 questions. The first one is off the back of what you were saying about building your career around the service of the community and trying to move everyone forward. I think that the fashion industry is known to be a very cutthroat place, and part of its allure sometimes is exclusivity and looking at the best magazines, the best fashion houses, fashion is so exclusive, I'm going to give them this kind of thing. So how can we, you know, as people on the ground maybe aren't on that VIP list all the time, or maybe it takes working many years in internships and things to pay your dues to have somebody actually listen to what you have to say. How can we build community and create safe, inclusive, and welcoming spaces so that people. That's the first question. The second question, so that one's more focused on community, right? The second question is more of a marketing question that focuses on money. So it's a wonderful thing to get into a room together with like-minded people, to support each other, to have drinks, to have conversations, to take content, and to say we're building a beautiful community. But how can we build a community that supports business objectives and drives business owners, founders, fashion designers, whatever that business is, forward and closer to their objective? Thank you.
So fashion loves exclusivity, but communities need to be inclusive. How do we solve for that? And how do we get together in ways that do not just give us emotional support, but make us happy?
Sorry, I just thought of Jabu, who is a global brand, but he's not in the big house. His whole social media account is super personal. And I think I can kind of almost answer the 2 in the same vein. It's like this path towards this vision of success. I don't know if that is. I think we need to, almost not, don't give that power. It's like then you're waiting for someone to say, okay, here's the door. Ignore the door. Like, do what you want to do. And I think back to like the making money part is like be creative. Find ways to make money. Host events. Collaborating with the restaurants. Like there's ways to think, naturally and outside the conventional kind of lanes. I think that's the way forward. Does that make sense?
So I think about that a lot, what you just asked, and I think there's hope because there is change. I think on an advocacy policy perspective, which a lot of on the ground fashion people probably don't know, is that there's a lot of conversations around this in the UN, right, about how toxic fashion is. There are organizations like the Fashion Conscious Fashion Lifestyle Network, right? The UN literally has a fashion community that you can be part of. And it's almost kind of like blue ticking certain brands that they fall under the ways of doing things that are kinder and gender and people focused. So I believe in stepping into those communities because that's where you find your people. And after you've done that, you need to be intentional about like, how do I partner with you? Maybe it's going to take a year, maybe it's going to take 3 years, maybe it's going to take 8 years. But I see you and I see what you have. And how do you intentionally work together? I think that's very important. It might not be today, but it's about how you see the long-term vision of your brand. And that's where the money comes in. Yeah, patience. Patience.
Just because we spoke about the network, that was actually how I found Tamara, actually. We're both in the network. And I think last year I was on the anniversary committee in the network and I saw some brands and so I was like, who's this? I probably too, but I didn't have anything that we were going to work on together or I supported her. And it wasn't until about a year or 2 years that we were coming to Cape Town. Of course, I want her. And then I think that we're going to work together on all the things going forward. So, yes, fashion is expensive, but I really think that it also really depends on what you're focusing on and what you're seeing. And I get it because this exclusive communities sometimes seem like the ones that have everything and you want to be a part of. But I promise you, when you go inside, from the inside perspective, you realize that not everything looks as it seems. And it's just oh, no, I'm never going to do anything. Then it's not that. It's I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to look for places that are already open and welcoming. I mean, I got the UN Conscious Fashion Network as a member, registered one of our programs. And then I got invited to join the fashion committee. What did I do? Nothing. I was just a creative founder in Nigeria, So the communities that want to welcome you, they want to hear from you, they want to invite you to places to speak. And every time I said it, the world actually wants to hear from us. They're curious about what's happening in Africa. And sometimes we focus so much on the things, the spaces where we feel like instantly we feel like we're not being welcome, that we're missing out on the global world that is willing to receive you. And then being in all of these spaces then feeds into funding and all of these things. But even for funding in the community, how does it go beyond just having nice tea? I think it's also having very important conversations and being in the right community. So we allow, for example, when we have our meetings, being here, for example, we're not just here to have a conversation. There are brands that we brought from Kenya, Nigeria, Zambia, South Africa that are in the room, and we'll put them on the street for people to buy from them. That is money coming from the brands one way or the other. We're having conversations with, can we have this clear potential buyers? How can we extend? Because money is very important. But I think being in the right community, having the right conversations in those communities, it's not just about, and this goes back to what we say about fashion being serious business, where it's not just about looking good and smiling, it's having the right conversation, designing the right initiatives, solving the right problems, because there's money out there. I'm saying to everybody, a lot of money is in the community creative industry, and finding myself in rooms where it's lots of conversations on funding from all of the spaces community creative industry. But when we have a solid voice, a clear objective, and we're very clear about what we want, we design initiatives and make it easy for government agencies, private, and even I think private institutions, banks, all these people that are looking to connect with the creative industry. We just need to have the right conversation, designing the right objectives. So even in your community, it's how do we design objectives that help us make money, help our farmers make money,
how we're speaking to the right people, because the people who have money, and then how we would speak to them on the right time. So I think sometimes also in the fashion industry, we're looking for grants, which is not a bad thing. Grants are great, but then we can also start to say, how can we secure, have conversations around investments, low interest loans, all of these things. Because for those people, that is their business. That is how they make money. So when we come to them with those kind of conversations, it shows that we know what we're doing, we know what we want, and we're ready to have money conversations.
Yeah, that's super important. I'd say another idea that you could do possibly within your community is yet another idea from the tech community, which I say they function pretty well as a community, while they still got their exclusivity, inclusivity thing going on. There's the idea of a mastermind. You bring together like-minded people, but not necessarily in similar roles or similar businesses. And each one of you is going to get up, make a 10-minute presentation about yourself, your business, and a particular challenge you're trying to solve. You're going to give everybody context. You're going to tell everybody the things they should know about your industry in order to understand this problem. And then these wonderful minds are going to give you outside perspective that you would not necessarily get from inside your circle. And yeah, you help each other solve problems. You can bring to that kind of space money problems and have everybody telling you, well, in my industry I had a similar issue. It's not your industry, but this is how I make money solving that problem. So yeah, more knowledge exchange is always like super, super important. And then just on the exclusivity thing, the flip side of the exclusivity thing, one side of the coin is that snobbery, that wanting to keep things to yourself and enjoying the elevation of other people that like access not give you. The other side of the exclusivity thing is trust. People become closed off after experiences like yours, and only want to operate within their circles of trust. So people are like, oh, it's nepotism, they're always working with the same people. It's because they don't trust anybody else. And so building circles of trust, expanding circles of trust, you will have more than one group of people that you organize with, work with, hang out with, that contain people that you trust. You, as a person who's the link between all of those groups, create as much cross-pollination between your circles of trust as possible. That is how you expand circles of trust. That's how you get everybody trusting everybody a little bit more. So I'm going to go to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Nabasan. I'm a designer from Zambia. First of all, thank you for the talk, it was very insightful. I would like to know, how do you handle plagiarism or copyright infringement as a designer or as somebody who's trying to connect the industry? Do you experience this type of Corona with the designers that you do connect? Is getting onto you to kind of find solutions onto about it? I'll give an example of myself. Shelly, who is she in social two houses, they stole my design. She had the audacity to just grab my image, cut my head off, and it's literally on their side as we speak right now. And all I knew is people were just tagging me on Instagram. And that's why I also realized the importance of social media because I wouldn't have known. But then where I'm stuck is where do I go? Because even the print that they have, I ran out of that print. They're bottoms and all this replicate. And they're selling it for like $15. So that being said, I think this is something to consider because we should know how do we go about it, how can we stop it.
Yeah, unfortunately, it happens quite a lot. And sometimes it's hard to control. But I will say that one thing we started to do in West Africa and the equivalent design industry is, for example, there's a designer, I think it's Ima Eduso, who's an Austrian collection, and she first of all releases like a legal document that says that the collection she loves to release has been trademarked. Anyone who HRIs is going to be soon. I will be having a lot of conversations and interactions around fashion law, and maybe behind this I can connect you with them. I know a couple of fashion lawyers who focus on that. I mean, it's with a big company like Shein, it's really hard, right? But I think it's best to try to start to sue these agencies, start to, even before you design and release things, share around things like prints. In terms of style, you can't, it's hard to trademark the style. But in terms of print, you can trademark your print and say it's unique to you. So I can always sort of connect you to the lawyer. I know that there too, there's one called American Fashion Law, and there's another law, Fashion Law Institute, where we work together to do a lot of trademarking, collective designs, writing letters, and all of those things. And I think we need to do more of that. The more we do it, it no longer becomes a conversation of whether it was successful or not. It becomes a conversation of, oh, they're not sitting back anymore, they're not taking this anymore. And it starts to reduce a lot of that. Because the truth is, we are really global businesses, we want the world to see us. And the world is going to try to exploit what we see, especially if we see that it works. So we also need to start to pay attention to all of these legal parts of the business. And this goes back to the position that we're paying attention to the other things outside of creativity, so that we start to protect ourselves even before we create. And when things come up like this, we already have certain backup plans or plans to mitigate the situation. So
No, I think.
No, I was the fashion law institute in the US, right?
no, in Nigeria.
Because I think you also need more pro bono lawyers on the African continent.
And you do pro bono.
Right.
They have a pro bono law thing.
So sorry about that, that's horrible.
I actually have, well, she's an ESG lawyer, so an environmental lawyer, but she's super connected to the sustainable fashion community in South Africa. She might have some advice for you as well, so I'll connect you to her. By the way, Kapasa is one of our visiting designers. She's the designer of my Michi doll, which is behind her to your left, between Temuruku and Vivius. It's her race, so you please check that out. We are just about out of time, everyone. So our speakers, I hope we'll be able to stand around for a few more minutes. If you have any more questions, or you'd like to talk to them about a particular initiative, something that you're working on. But I'd like to thank all of you for spending your time with us, for asking such great questions, for being a part of this conversation. And one more time, I would really like to thank our speakers for their time, their expertise, and just their generosity. Thank you.
Okay.